Hello everybody. Welcome back to another live stream. Today we're going to talk about Django. Django and Python. Let's get some quieter music going. So, hey everybody, welcome. We are going to talk about Django and Python. Django is a web framework for Python. Hello, Vaxshore and E. Brooks. Welcome. It's good to see you all again. So, Django is like the de facto web framework for Python. Flask is the other one. Those are probably the two most popular ones. Now, we did a little bit of Flask the other day when we did the PayPal IPN listener. We used Flask, which, you know, they call it a micro framework. Super lightweight, but it gives you a lot of control because it's so lightweight. So it's good if you have really small applications, or you just need to throw up something quick for prototyping, or you just want more control over the tools used. Django is more of a full-featured web framework. Django comes with an ORM, with authentication packages, with all of that stuff. You don't have to use it, but you can. So, while Django is a web framework, you don't have to use it for websites or web applications. In this case, I'm going to show how you can use Django to create command line applications and run cron jobs with those command line applications. So the reason you would want to do that is for a couple of reasons. One is if you have a database that you want to interact with and you want to use the Django ORM to make interacting with all of your data much easier. If you have cron jobs, there's a lot of reasons you want the command line management scripts. But even if you do have a web application, these commands can still be useful. So even if you have a website, maybe you still want to run a cron job to take care of some regular updates. And so you can hook into your website using these methods. So we're going to start from scratch, basically. We're going to set up a totally fresh Django project, and we're going to show how to do the command line apps, how to add the models, to add some database interaction, and all that good stuff. Computers with Nikita says, hi, welcome. Glad to see you back too. We're talking about Django today. We're just getting started. We're gonna start by setting up a new Python virtual environment for our project. So we're just in the home directory now, and we should have Python 3 installed. It should come by default on Ubuntu. So we got 3.6 installed. So we can do python-m venv to invoke the venv module, and then we tell it the name of our virtual environment we want to create. In this case, we'll just call it, well, first let's create a directory. We'll call it Django CLI. And inside there, we'll make the virtual environment. So you can do python-3-m venv, and then give it the name. In this case, we'll just call it venv. So this creates an isolated virtual environment for Python. Inside of it, it's got its own instance of Python, and it's got its own instance of pip, and its own instance of all the packages installed. So when we activate it with source venv/bin/activate, then our terminal updates with this venv in the corner. So that tells us that's the virtual environment name that we're currently in. So if we do a which pip or a where pip and a where Python, we can see that at the top of the list is our virtual environment. So if we do a pip list, it should be totally empty, except for the default ones. So we can do a pip install Django. This will install it to our virtual environment. And the reason you do this is so you don't mess up all your system packages, and so you can keep all your project packages isolated, because one project may need Python 2, one project may need Python 3. So now if we do a pip list, we should see Django and all of its dependencies installed. So from here we can do Django admin. This is how you create a new project. Django admin should be, when you install Django, it puts this script in your path. So you do Django admin start project. Oh, you've got to give it a name. Can I tell it to go here? We'll call it app. No, we don't want to call it app. Okay, so it ended up creating it in a subdirectory, which is okay. Not what I wanted, but it should be totally fine. So now that we have a Django project, we can do manage.py is the main file for doing all of your Django interaction. So you do Python manage.py, and you can do things like start app. You can do migrate to do your database migrations. I think if I just run it by itself, yeah, it'll give me a list of some of the options. So you can do things like DB shell, dump data, migrate, send test email, shell, start app, start project, test, so, and run server. Run server is probably one of the important ones if you're actually going to do some web development. But because we're not actually making a web app here, we're doing command line stuff, we don't even need to worry about the web server. We're not going to have to worry about HTML templates. We're not going to have to worry about doing any JavaScript. None of that. We're not going to have to deal with URL routing. None of that stuff. Or servers, or ports, or any of that for this. So let's do start app. So inside Django, inside a Django project, all of your little modules, your packages, they're called apps, and so that's how you break down the application into these things called apps. And inside each app, you've got your templates, your controllers, your models, your typical MVC stuff. You've got all your models, views, and controllers all in each little app, and they all work together. So in this case, what we're going to do as a command line application for the example is we're going to do something that just does an HTTP request and checks if a site is up and returns an HTTP 200 OK. So we're going to write a command that will go check all of the sites in our database and then update the database with the information. So we will look at creating models to interact with the database, and then creating command line applications to interact with those database models, and then setting up a cron job to run those scripts. So in this case, we'll start an app. We'll call it, why don't we call it site checker? So now that we have that ready, now I think it's time to open up PyCharm and get PyCharm set up. Of course, you don't have to use PyCharm. You can use Visual Studio Code, Sublime Text, Notepad if you really had to, Vim if you like to live on the edge. I recommend PyCharm. There is a free version and there's a professional version. I do pay for the suite of JetBrains tools because I use almost all of them. But with the professional version, you actually get some Django integration. So you get this database browser on the right. I think that's part of the pro version, and you get Django, better Django support. So what we have open here is PayPal stuff. This is the project from yesterday, sorry. Or not yesterday, but a couple streams back, I guess, when we were looking at Python. That was the Flask project we did to get PayPal notifications. So when somebody buys something, you get the notification and you can process something for that user, like update how many tokens they have or add the subscription. Okay, so PyCharm, I need to open the folder that we have. In this case, it's called Django CLI. And I'm just going to open the Django directory for the Django project. So we see right in the root of our Django project here is the manage.py. And all that does is kind of load your settings file and then invoke some of the Django core management tool, which was, I'll open the terminal again. And if you haven't seen PyCharm before, so it's got a terminal down here, and it will automatically activate your virtual environment if you have it set up. So for this project, I need to go to File, Settings, Project, Project Interpreter, and then I need to add the virtual environment. So add Python interpreter, virtual environment, existing environment, and I'm going to add a new one, the virtual environment that we created for this Django app. Why won't it let me pick it? Okay. There we go. And we can see now that it's got Django installed. And if you want to install packages, you can just click the plus and search and do the install there. It is just a shortcut to pip. And you can, right click, you can just do delete over here too. And you can easily switch between interpreters, so we're going to stick with this virtual environment for this app that we created. So now if I open the terminal again, we'll see that it says venv, indicating it has the virtual environment that we created activated, so we can do a where pip and a where python again, just to ensure that those are the ones that it's using, and do a pip list and ensure Django. This is Django 2.0. Okay, so back over here in our project, we have two apps that are created. One is called Site Checker, and the other one is called Django CLI. Django CLI was the name of the project we created, and that's it's created by the project, and it's got some of the core information. And there's a couple files here. There's settings, URLs, and WSGI. WSGI is the interface for web applications, and all you would do is set your web server to point to the WSGI file if you were setting up a web app, and we're not doing that. But if you are interested in learning how to set up WSGI, I do have a tutorial here on how to do it with Apache, and it is for Arch Linux, but the installation should be very similar. You can adapt it very slightly to your needs, but it's got an example config on how to set it up and all that good stuff. There's other tutorials for that, but we're not going to cover that because we're doing command line stuff. So same thing with the URLs. The URLs file maps all of the URL routing. When you have the web app /this/that, you map those to functions, but because we're not making the web app, we don't need URLs either. So we can just totally ignore those. Now, the one important file we do want to look at here is the settings file. And we'll just browse through it and make sure everything looks good. Base directory is always going to be okay. The secret key is something that it randomly generates on the start, so that's okay too. It starts out with some default applications. And I mentioned a minute ago how Django has the apps which are the little modules that make up a whole Django project. And this is where you define what apps you want. So we created an app just a second ago, right? This site checker one. And so, okay, it's called site checker. So we have to do site checker and see it does some autocomplete for us. Site checker. And it's green squiggly because of spelling. So we'll just say save it so it goes away and looks nice. I've got the same song playing, so I'm gonna pick it. I didn't realize that playlist only had one song. Let's try out this one. Okay, so we added our app to be in, and when it says installed, it just means load these apps when you run. And so a lot of these we won't need, actually, like static files. We shouldn't need that. We probably don't even need sessions or content types. I'm gonna leave auth and admin. You know, we could leave those in. It doesn't really hurt at all, and we may want to add templates later, so I'm just gonna leave all the defaults as they are. Middleware is okay. It adds CSRF tokens and stuff like that. You know, I wouldn't mess with those unless you need to. Especially for this, it's the CSRF. None of this matters for what we're doing. You know, CSRF, authentication layers, X-frame options, cross-site scripting, none of that's a problem for what we're doing here, because there's no front end. Templates is okay. WSGI application, that's fine. Databases, good. It starts with SQLite 3 by default, and that's fine. It'll create a file called db.sqlite. We can customize that if we want. We can just say database.sqlite 3. Why not? We'll just be extra explicit. And it should create it automatically. Now if we do python manage.py migrate, it's going to run the migrations. If you're not familiar with migrations, it's a way to store database schema as code. So right now we don't even have a database file at all. With SQLite, it's just a single file. We don't have the database, and so we don't have the tables to store all the user information and all that stuff that comes with the authentication package by default. I do want the user model, because with these sites that we're creating, when we're doing the site checker, I want the sites to be associated to users, which is normally the way that it goes. So python manage.py migrate. When you migrate, it's going to run the migrations associated with all of the installed apps. And in this case, the installed apps like auth come with migrations, and I'll show you what that looks like. So if we open up external libraries here on the left, external libraries, and Python, and Dmitry Ivanov says, "Hey all, and welcome, Dmitry. Good to have you here. We're talking about Python and Django today." So if we open up the external libraries and Python 3, this is specifically our virtual environment that it has loaded. So we're looking at there, and we want to look in site packages. In there's Django, that's the app we have installed. So if we go to contrib, Django contrib auth, then we can see all of the code associated with this app that it has installed. So we could copy the whole thing into our app, rename it, and start using it and start modifying it, but we're not going to do that. We're going to use it as it is. So what I did want to show you was the migrations folder. So when we did manage.migrate, python manage.py migrate, when we run this command, it's running through all of the apps that are installed, and it's looking for this migrations folder. And in this case, it has 9 migrations. And if you look at it, it basically stores the database schema as code. So you'll see create model, field name, fields, ID name, content type, code name, and what type of fields they are, characters, dates, this and that. So the reason you do this is for a couple reasons. It makes it easier to manage your schema, manage it across environments. It also makes it agnostic to what backend you have. So you can run migrate on a SQLite backend, and it'll do the same thing that it will do if you have a MySQL backend versus SQLite backend, or you change it to Postgres. So it abstracts all of that away. And the way the migrations work are pretty cool. I'll show them later. I'm not going to get too much into them now, but we'll make some migrations later, and I'll show you how it automatically generates the migrations based on your changes in the models. So you don't ever have to write these migrations yourself unless you need something super custom. And if you run migrate again, it'll be intelligent and say, okay, all the migrations are applied, no problem, nothing to do. Just so it's safe to run as many times as you want, just to make sure everything's up to date. Okay, so now we have a database, and now we see that there is a database.sqlite file created, and it matches the name that we told it to use here in the settings file. And SQLite databases are cool because you can delete them real easily. You can back them up by just creating a quick copy. But I want to show over here in the database tab, I think we can just literally drag our database over here into this database browser and open it up and start looking at it. Oh, actually, I think I need to do one thing. So if you go to add data source SQLite, it'll tell you don't have the drivers, so you have to do download missing driver file. It's downloading the Java file to do SQLite. So now it should, let's just clear it out again. Now that we have that installed, we can just drag and drop and it'll work just like that. And so now we can see inside the database here, and we have all the schemas that it created. So we see all these auth this, auth that. Auth is the user management stuff. So you see it's got a table, last login, is super user, username, is staff, is active, date joined, last name, stuff like that, user stuff. So now that we're using the Django users, we've got them created, and all the other good stuff. Let's minimize that. Okay, so we're setting it up. We're going through the settings file, making sure everything in the settings file looks good. Time zone, that's okay. And static, okay. So nothing in the settings we need to worry about. It all looks good. So we went through all of the files that it created out of the box when it created our new project. This is like the core app that it creates. And so one note on the settings file, what I like to do with multiple environments, and so if you've got a dev environment, a production, a staging, and you've got 4 developers that all have their own versions, you can do like this. I'll show you what I do. Create a settings shared file that has all of the settings that are global and apply to all the environments, or just the full config period. And then we'll create separate settings files that are specific, that will override any changes that are in the shared file. So in the settings shared file, we leave it as it is, and in the settings.py file itself, we're actually going to delete it, and we're just going to say from settings shared, actually from Django CLI dot settings. Actually, I don't think that hyphen is a good idea. I think underscore would be a little better. Yeah, so now the autocomplete's a little better. From Django CLI dot settings shared, import star. So then it just imports everything from the shared settings. And here we can override anything we want. So in this case, we can say like in the shared settings, we'll say debug equals false to be safe, right? That's the default. And in our local environments, we can say debug equals true. And then the settings file, since this is mine and it's specific to my environment, I'm going to call this one settings nano. And then I'll create another one called settings production. And then in this one, I'll just, I might as well just be explicit. No matter what, the settings shared one will always have that. But then we have a shared settings, and then these specific ones, like my override, so we can say like test email, and then be like, okay, this is where we want test emails to be sent. So every developer can have their own test email specified. And then you create a symlink. So in here you go into that app that we were looking at with all the settings files, and in the git ignore, you ignore settings.py, and then you just create a symlink. Target link name. Okay, so you do ln-s settings nanodana.py to settings.py, right? Yeah, okay. So now you don't ever... Hey, Jason Codes is back. Welcome back. So here you've got settings shared, where it's basically your default config file, and you just do everything in here, in your settings shared. But if you need to do something specific, then you can override it in the environment specific one. And then your settings.py is just a symlink to the environment specific one, and this gets ignored from Git completely. So that's what I do. That's how I manage settings files for multiple environments with Django. Now moving on, back to our site checker. So what do we want to do? We want to create a couple command line commands. We need to add a couple models. So let's start with the command line commands. Let's go to the documentation on djangoproject.com and search for management commands. They call them management commands, which just means command line commands. They're commands that you run from the server, not from the website front end. Okay. Here we go. So here's an example app that they have here. So they created an example app called polls, which would be the same as going in here and doing python manage.py start app polls, just like we did for the site checker. So it's showing you we got the views and the models and all that. That's all default, but you want to add the management and commands folders. So in our app, we want to create a new folder called management, and then another subfolder called commands. And then inside the commands folder is where we're going to put all of our Python scripts that we want to be able to run. And when we create our own commands, then we can run them with python manage.py. And so it would be, python manage.py, and then whatever your command is. Okay, so let's take their template. Here it is. Let's just go ahead and copy and paste this, and then we'll look at it in PyCharm. So we'll call this one hello.py, just to be our test script. And so we don't have any models. We can ignore that. The important thing we do need to import is from django.core.management.base import base command, and base command inherits all of the stuff we need to do the command line apps. And so it creates it in the form of a class. And in this class, you've got the help, and this is what shows up if you just do like python manage.py help. Maybe it's python manage.py help, and then it lists. So you'll see it lists all the commands that are available, and it's separated by app. So the auth, this is the auth app, the contributed auth app that we enabled. these commands are provided by the auth app: create super user, change password. Content types is the app. Django is the core, and so the core provides all these things like shell and DB shell and migrate, run server. Sessions has a couple. Site checkers, the one we just created, right? So now when we do python manage.py help, our app that we created shows up and it lists the command that we created, hello.py. So I think we can do python help hello, and it actually prints out all of the usage information about our command here. And so we copy and pasted it, so it's already got some it's got some stuff filled out, but we're going to look more closely at it now. So let's start with the help. In this case, this is just a test command that says hello. And add arguments. In this case, if you have arguments like, let's say a name. So we can say hello to the person's name. And nargs is how many, can it have more than one argument? So can we say something like name equals this plus that, or is it just a single thing? So let's look that up real quick, because that's something I don't memorize. So let's look up Django nargs, see what the options are. Okay, for positional arguments, you got question mark, star. No, that's not quite right. Let's see if there's... Well, it's not important. If we actually need to process some arguments, then we'll worry about that. But in this case, we're just going to leave it as the default and not even put anything. And type is actually going to be string. We want a string, not an integer. So the handle function is the main body of your stuff, of your command. So instead of just doing print statements, you can do the self.standardout.write. And this is a little better because print is not necessarily going to do what you want depending on how this framework is set up. So we'll use their method. That's probably the recommended one, and you can have the style. You don't have to do this either. I mean, you really could just do print hello, and we'll do that just to be clear, but it's better to do things a little more the Django idiomatic way, if possible. So let's say hello plus name. Arg's name, I think, is what we have to do. Let's go back to the command here. So how did they get it? Options. Options is what it is, not args. So options name is where it stores the argument that they add. And then we can just try running it now. So now that we have a very, very basic command, let's do python manage.py help. We'll see our app there. Okay, so let's do help hello. And then we see our app here. Python usage. Python manage.py hello. That's our command, is hello. And then everything inside the brackets is optional. So you can do -- version and get the version of things. -h is the help. You can override any of the settings from the settings files here. So all these options are provided by the core base command. And then the option we added here is name. And notice it's not in brackets, meaning it's not optional. And you can override here and say, I think it's probably just optional. Let's say optional equals true and print out the help message again. No, I think maybe it's required. Required equals false. No. Okay, so let's see. How do you make it required? Optional. Accepting optional arguments. Okay. Now why is this one optional but not this one? Oh, I see, because you have to add the dash dash. So I guess that's how you make it optional. If you just do name, it means like, yeah, it's not a flag, it's an argument, it's a requirement. But if you do dash dash name, then I think that's how it was saying that that's how you make it an optional flag. So now if we look at the help again where it says usage, now we see dash dash name, and then the name that we provide is in brackets, meaning it's all optional now. So now if we just do python manage.py hello, it'll say, okay, there's nothing there because it's empty. So let's do this. If we use a format string instead of the plus, it will automatically cast it to a string intelligently. So if you don't provide a name, it says hello none. So because we want it to be required, let's take out the dash dash and do this, and we'll say leave a comment about that, just in case we need it as a reference later. Okay, so yeah, now when we run it, it says error, the following arguments are required, name. So we say hello nano dano. So now the management command says hello nano dano in a nice green formatted message. And so that's what the style does. And the style will be smart about the colors. So you see how it gave us the green color? If you're doing a certain kind of output, you don't want the color because it's actually a bunch of characters. You know, it's console characters, and it'll jumble up your log files if you don't have color. So the no color option is part of the core command that they provide. So if you do no color, then you see that it doesn't print out any color. But if we take it off now and we do with the color, we can see we've got a green line and a red line because we did success and error. So that's why you use those style functions, because you can turn on and off the colors and things like that. And you can override the styles and create new styles. So now we have a nice example command to refer to as a template. So now let's create a new one called checkSites.py. And in checkSites, we want this to perform an HTTP GET request. Actually, let's just do a head request. HTTP head request to see if a site is up, and returns a 200 OK message. So that's what we want to do with this command. So let's go back and let's just copy and paste this one we created, because it is a nice template. So let's update the help text that says checks all sites. That's all we'll say for now. And do we want to take any arguments? Actually, no, we don't for now. So we can actually omit this whole function. You can omit the help too. So you can't actually just have a simple handle, but we'll try and do it. We don't have any args, okay? So we're gonna handle it. In this case, let's do checking all sites, please hold. And I'm gonna do a little prefix like this. And then we want to perform HTTP request. So right now we're just gonna go with one site, one hard-coded site. And so we'll say site URL equals the Dev Dungeon site. And then we're going to do requests.get. We do a head, actually, right? So request.head site URL and store a response. And then we're going to check the return code. So it's underlining requests in red because the package is not installed. So we just do Alt-Enter. No. I thought it would... Okay, so normally when you don't have the package... Oh, it's because if we do it up here, if we say import requests, then it'll be squigglied up here and we can do Alt-Enter and it'll say install package requests. And that will do the pip install into our virtual environment and give us what we need. Installing packages, what? That doesn't seem right. I've never had that happen before. So let's try it here and see if it gives us the same thing. We want requests. Requests. Install package. Installed successfully. Okay, that was weird. Not positive why I did that there, but whatever. We got it installed now. So response equals this, and then we want the code. So what is the code? Status code. There we go. Check the response. We'll print it out as a string, even though it should be a number. I believe it comes back as an integer. But we don't want print. We'll use the write. Clear out the test ones. Okay, so let's just give this a test. So we do python manage.py help, and we should see our commands listed. And so we see site checker, hello, and check sites. So now we'll do python manage.py. Actually, I'm going to do alias m equals python manage.py. So now I can just do m check sites. Okay, it's running. Boom, checking all sites, response 200. So now we have a command that will go ahead and do our site check, but we want it to do this for every site in our database. And we don't have a database with sites in it, so we need to start incorporating the Django models. So instead of site URL equals this, what we want to do is something like for site URL in list of URLs, and then do this check. And then instead of doing just printing out, we also want to do update database record to store the last response code. So in our database, we'll store the last response code for the site that we checked, and the time, and the timestamp. Okay, so here we don't need the define site URL anymore. We're just going to have to get list of URLs. So let's make a function called getURLList, and then we do Alt-Enter on it, and it will say, do you want to create a function called getURLList? And we do. And we're gonna just leave pass in there for now. Actually, for right now, we'll do we'll put one site in the list and return it just to test it out. Okay, so now for every site in our site list, perform the check and print out the response. So let's just test it again and make sure it's still working well. Okay, let's go ahead and add. We'll just add a second site. We'll do whatever. We'll just check GitHub.com. Okay, bam, bam. 200 and a 301. So a 301. I wonder where they sent us. Okay, so if you do www.github, it looks like it actually redirects you to no www. Anyway, now we got two 200s. That's okay. And let's make a little to-do here about following redirects. And I think you can tell requests to just automatically follow redirects. So let me check on that real quick. Requests, Python, follow redirect. Okay. Let's Control F for redirect. Bam, there it is. Allow redirects bool. Oh, it says defaults to true. Interesting. If it's defaulted to true, then why did it give us the 301? Do I have to like follow it one step further? Yeah, we can come back to that. That's not really too important here. So we've got this that checks the sites. Okay, we need to get sites in our database. So we need to create models. Now, in our app, when we did start app, it created a file called models, and it even has a little comment that says create your models here. Okay, so if we go back to the Django documentation, it'll give us all the details we need for models. Okay, so we found on the Django documentation page, we found a quick example, and that's all we really want is just a quick example. So we copy that over, and so we don't want a person, we want a site, and we want a check object. And so the site is going to represent a website. And so we don't want a first name, we want a URL that is a character field, and let's give it a max length of 256. So we've got the URL. What else do we need to store? We need to store the last response code, and we'll let that be a character field too. It should just be like a 3-digit number, but we'll go ahead and give it eight characters and let it be a string just for this. Okay, so we need the URL, the last response code, and the last time checked. And so if we do models, there should be a date time field, and we'll do a date time field and just leave it blank for now. Okay, so we've got the URL. What else does a site model need? If we could track in the website and when it gets checked, we need the URL, the last response code, the last time it was checked, and the user. And so with the user, you do a foreign key, and then you have to tell it what model you're referencing. So let's do a Control F in their documentation for foreign key. There we go. Foreign key, here's an example. Models.foreign key, and then you give it the name as a string of the object. And it should be, and see how it gives us the autocomplete, and it gives us intelligent, like it knows specifically these are it should be referencing a model, and that's one of the PyCharm Pro features. You know, the Django integration. It knows that this string that I'm trying to enter into this function needs to reference a model, so it only completes me names of models. Okay, so it's and on delete is model cascade. Is that what we want? Yes. So what that means is when the user gets deleted, should you delete all of these sites that go along with it? And in that case, we do. So if we delete a user, we'll go ahead and delete all of the sites that were associated with it. And then so on the checks, a check is going to belong to a site, right? So we can say the site equals a model's foreign key, and that's going to be the site. And see if we do autocomplete helps us out. And we can say on delete, do the same thing. So on delete models.cascade. The other option is do nothing. So you can tell it do nothing when the foreign key model is deleted, or you can say cascade. So in this case, we'll do the same thing on delete cascade. And then if we delete a user, it'll delete all the sites, and in turn it'll delete all the checks that belong to the site. Okay, so a site belongs to a user, a check belongs to a site, and the check is going to be we're going to need to know the time that it happened. So we're going to say model datetime field, and in this case auto created equals true. Wait, is that the right one? Okay, so in a datetime field in Django, you can tell it automatically set the time to the time that it was created or the time that it was last updated. So in this case, let's say I think it's auto now add. So if you just do auto now equals true, it'll automatically update it every time it's modified. If you just do auto now add, it will set the time to the time that it was created automatically. So when this is inserted, it'll automatically timestamp it, which is what we want. And then we have to tell it what site it belongs to. And then we want to store the response code. And we'll do the same thing. We'll do response code equals 8 characters. And so the reason we're going to store the response code here in the checks, now we could omit last response code and last time checked from the site. And you could just always do a lookup that says, okay, pull all of the checks for that site, sort them by time, and check the time on the last one, and check the status code on the last one. But over time, if you've got millions and millions of these checks in the database, then every time you just want to check the current status of your site, you've got to go, query through that other table and do all that. So this will save a lot of database lookup time if all you need on the, on the user profile page or whatever is just, last time checked and last status. And if they want the history, they can pull up the history and it'll load all of them. But this keeps it a little cleaner and leaner. And it doesn't take up much extra space. It's just like 8, probably like a couple extra bytes per site. Okay, so we've got all this created. I think we're good here, and the user model is coming from auth. We didn't have to create that because the auth model that we added provides it. So now we can go back into our command here, and we can say in our get URL list, instead of just returning a hard-coded list, we can say site.objects.all, and we're going to have to import it. And so when it asks us to import, it suggests what we should import, and it is correct. We want our sitechecker.models.site. And so this is how you just load all of the entries from the database in Django. You do model name.objects.all. And so in this case, we can just say return sites.objects.all. And in fact, at this point, we can just probably get rid of the whole function, since there's no reason to abstract it that much. So, okay, for site, in this case, we'll just say for site in site objects, and then here we'll do site.url. And so now it's going to go through every site object and pull out the URL to do a check. And so let's go ahead and run it, just make sure it still works. We're not going to have any sites in the database yet. Ah, there's an error. There is a problem. So, but site doesn't provide user. I think we need to do one of two things. We need to import user. Is that it? Let me check the error real quick. We also need to do, I'll do this first. So because we created some new models here, now we have to make our migrations. So if we do python manage.py make migrations, oh, okay, it really doesn't like that. So do we have to do like django.contrib.auth.user? Hold on a second. Django model reference user. Let's see. How are they doing it here? It should just... Oh, you know what? I think it may just actually want the model instead of the string. Maybe those... I was looking at the latest docs before, right? This is 2.1, and it showed with the string. But let's try like that. Yeah, that worked. Okay, so we're actually using the direct reference to the model, to the class. So we did make migrations, and that created a couple migrations. See, it created site checker /migrations /001 initial.py, and then it tells us exactly what it did. Created model check, created model site, added field site to check. Okay, so we can look at the migration, though we don't really have to modify it or anything. We can just kind of confirm it. It made it, it looks good. So we made the migration, but now we have to apply the migration. So we do python manage.py migrate, and it says applying all, and then it says applying site checker 001 initial. Okay, so we're good to go now. So now if we do python manage.py and check sites, our custom command, checking all sites, okay, no problem. Oops. So it checked all our sites, and normally we'd expect it to print out the response, but there were no sites to check. So it just kind of abruptly quit. So let's add some sites. Now the way you can do this without having the web interface is by using the shell. And so you can do python manage.py shell, and there's also one called db shell. And I've used shell, but I don't think I've used db shell specifically, so let's see how that's different. Runs the command line client for the database engine specified in your engine setting. So if you had MySQL, it would automatically log you into MySQL. Now let's see what shell is different. Starts the interactive interpreter. Oh, okay, so if you do db shell, it's actually going to give you like a MySQL prompt. So this will SQLite 3. I need to do apt-get install SQLite 3. Okay, so now that we installed the command line, if we do python manage.py db shell, it'll drop us right into a SQLite shell. And if it was MySQL, it drops into a MySQL shell. And so you can do a .tables, and you'll see all the tables. And you can do like a select star from site checker _ site. And we'll see there's nothing there. And that's okay. But we don't want to necessarily do it through the SQLite interface. We want to do it. Pardon me. I'm sorry about that. I did mute it in time. We want to do the shell, and in the shell, it's a Python shell, so you can do. It loads up all your settings and everything. So in this case, we can do something like from Django CLI dot. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna try something and do this. So I noticed here when you do Django admin shell to get the interactive Python interpreter, it gives you the option to choose an interface. And you can choose IPython, BPython, and Python. Now, IPython's a pretty cool interpreter, but BPython is awesome. It's even better than IPython. So let's try this shell -- interface equals BPython. Actually, I wonder if we can even do. Well, we'll just start with that. Misspelling. Just do a Control-T to transpose our mistake, and now we're in the BPython shell. So it's got like all kinds of really awesome autocomplete. That's why I really like it. So we're going to do import. Actually, we want to do from Django CLI. That's our app name. And then we do dot, and we want it from our. Where is it? It should be. Maybe it's not picking up our. Oh, I just do it right from here. So it's from site checker. From site checker.models import site. So then we can do site dot. Let's see, what's the command? Django models. It's create, or is it called add? I forget off the top of my head. I need a summary. Where's the summary of all the fields or the methods? Let's shrink it. I'm looking for the function, the method to create a model. Is it .new or is it .create? Maybe this will help out. .new? No. .create? .add? No, none of those. I think I just do this. You create a new one, right? So you do a new site equals site, and then we can specify the value. So if we have our model file open here, we can see all the fields. So we can say like URL equals, well, I'll call this one. Oh, you know what we should add is a description. Description equals models.carefield. We'll just give that one. I like the 256 for now too. And so I'm going to open a new terminal just so I can quickly run python manage.py make migrations, so that it will. Let's see. We'll provide a one-off default. Okay, so now we can do python manage.py migrate. That will update the database. Now we will have the new field that we just added. So let's do again python manage.py shell -- interface equals bpython. And then we'll say from site. Oh, look, it even remembered what I did. So, okay, I'll take it. Oops. From site checker.models, and you can just hit up also to rerun the commands. Okay, so where were we? We imported the site. We're gonna say new site equals site where the URL equals dev dungeon and description is just a test. And can we just do that? New site, and then we do new site dot create dot commit. What is it? I forget what it is. Create new insert. Oh. Okay, so let's go to documentation. I don't want the tutorials. I want the API documentation. just the straight up API docs. I guess what we can do here is just control click into the model and look ourselves. I think it's Alt 7 for the structure. So now we can see all of the model methods. And let's look for the one we need. Model, okay. Save, that's what it is. So we just do new site.save and we run that. Okay, so not null constraint failed. Last time checked. So let's go back to our model and we'll say last time checked and we'll say default equals null. No, I think we have to say blank equals true, null equals true, to allow them to be blank. Because right now the database is saying you cannot omit that field, it is required. And for the user, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for now. Same thing for the response code. Okay, so the only ones that are really required are the description and the URL for creating a new one. So now if we do that, we can do new site.save, and hopefully this will work without any, well, okay, we're gonna have to do a Python manage.py make migrations and then migrate. Okay, so now we're good to go. Now we can run the shell again. Python manage.py shell -- interface b Python. Okay. Now that we're back in the shell, we want to do from site checker that. Input site, and then we want to go up until we repeat this, and go repeat new site.save. Okay, that went through. So now let's open up our database browser and just confirm that everything looks good. So we'll refresh. We go here in our main, and we'll see that there's a table for our check and a table for our site. And if we double click on site checker, it'll load all the columns. And now we can verify that we have our test entry. So we see our URL, our description, all that good stuff. So we see our site got added. So let's add another site. We'll just again test github.com and then do save. Okay, so now if we refresh, we should see another one. Bam! Now we have two sites. Okay, so what I think we should do is make a simple management command called add site. This make it a little easier so we don't have to use that shell, because that shell it's not so intuitive and easy to remember if all we want to do is add a URL. So we'll say add site.py. And we can use the exact same code because we were in the Python interpreter. So it's literally the same code you can copy and paste. Even the import statement is the same. From site checker .models import site. And we also need to import the base command stuff. So we'll take our hello function, our hello thing that we made earlier, and we'll use that as a template. And then in the handle, we'll just drop in the code we want there. And, well, we'll leave these because we need to have a success and an error message depending on what happens. So, good, we got some example arguments. In this case, we want to add the URL as an argument that's required. And we want to add a description that's also required. And those are the two required fields. So from there we'll say URL equals options URL. And the description is options description. New site save. And we can do like a try. So if there's an exception, we can print out an error formatted message that just says error adding site with the error message. And if it works, we'll just say, no problem, site added, and then we'll just echo back the URL and the description. So we'll have to create a tuple to pass, and then inside we're going to say options URL and options description. Okay, so now if we get out of there, now if we do python manage.py help, we will see our, wait, why is it not there? We should have another one called add sites. Oh, we didn't put it inside the commands folder. Okay, so now that it's inside the commands folder, it should find it as a command. So now we'll see that there's an add site command. We can do help add site, and it'll give us the information. So it says positional arguments, URL, and description. And I think we can even add some help text here. No, okay, we'll skip that. So the command is add site, URL, description. So now if we just do python manage.py add site, we can just add the URL. We'll put it in quotes. So we'll do https/ we'll do dev dungeon without the www, and then the description. So we'll just say dev dungeon without www. So this should add. There we go. Site added, and then a success message. And if we go back again to our database and we browse in there, we'll refresh it, double click on the site table, and it'll load up everything in there. And so we see now there's a couple entries, and the new entry is what we said. So it's all good there. Okay, let's close that. Clear out all our windows. So now we have a nice helpful function for adding a site. Let's say add a new site to the database. And we're not using command error. Okay. So now we have, let's go back to where we left off before we had to go make all the models. So we have this function called this command called check sites. And now what it's doing is it's going through for every site in site objects. Okay, so now we can run that. Now that we have some sites in there, we took a moment to go be able to add sites. So now we can say check sites, and it's going to go through and it's going to check every site, and boom, it gives us the response for every one. So we can say, let's say response for, and we'll put out the website name. So we can do site.url, comma, there. So now if we run it again, now we can actually see which site is getting which response. And that's okay, we don't even need to really print it out. It's just for debugging right now. So we have another, another to-do. You know, I'm not sure why it's not following. Why it's not following the redirects, because they say it should by default. We'll get back to that though. Multi-thread. So yeah, because there might be a lot of sites, and each one might take some time to check, we'll want to thread those, and so they can all run separately. So where are we now? So when we check a site, we want to do a little more, right? We want to create a database entry for the check, and we want to update the site object so that the last updated value changes. So while we've got the site object still active, we can just do. Now, how do we update the value? I think it's just like this. So site URL. In this case, we'll say site last response code and site last time checked. In this case, we could just do I think it's date time dot now, and you can't just give it a Python date object, which is really nice. Yep. So import datetime dot datetime. And as far as the last response code, we'll just say whatever the response code is, but I think we're going to have to cast it to a string just to be sure. Okay, and then we'll have to say site.save to update those values. Okay. So Python manage.py check sites. And to confirm how it looks right now, let's open the sites up and see tab placement. Okay. So we'll open the sites and we can see the last response code and the last time checked is blank for all of them. So if we run it now, okay, it's telling us it received a naive date time, which is okay. We'll have to set the time zone. There's an easy update you can do in the settings to fix that. I'll check that in a second. Fix time zones. And so with these hashtag to-dos, if you look at the bottom of PyCharm, there's a to-do thing. And if you open that up, it actually searches through all of your code and looks for to-dos. And it even shows you like where the items are. So you can always check. You don't have to just embed them somewhere in the code and never find them again. It kind of does it for you. It's very nice. Okay, so now if we go to the sites and we refresh, now we see that the last response code is populated for all of them, and the last time checked is populated, and it's even down to the millisecond, telling us exactly what time it got saved. Okay, so we've got the site checking. We also want to create an entry for the check. So the check model that we created, if we go back to models.py, we created the site and we created the check. So every time we check a site, we're going to update the last response code and the last time checked. But we also want to create an entry for the check so we can have a historical record if we want to check the history or graph the history over time in a plot or something. So let's see, it belongs to a site. It's got a time that defaults to now, so we don't even have to set it, and a response code. So all we have to do here in our checker is, so we'll save the site and then we'll also create the check. So we just say new check entry equals check, and it's red because it's not imported, so we do alt enter and it suggests what to import, and that's fine. So we create the check, but we also want to set the site equals to the site. And so you have two ways to set this foreign key. In the model, it's set as a foreign key to the site, so a check belongs to a site. If you only have the ID handy, you can do site ID, and then you can give it like the actual ID. But if you have the site object, like we have the actual object loaded in Python, you can actually pass it the object and it will intelligently say, okay, what is the ID? Let's store that ID in the database. So we just set the site that it belongs to the site, and then we just set the response code to whatever the real response code was. But again, I think we'll want to cast it to a string just to be safe. Okay, so now that we've created it, we can say new check entry.save. And so we could even shorten it to just this, you know, that one line right there creates the whole new object and saves it and everything. And ideally we'd do like a try. So we'll do a try. And let's go back to the other one to pull. So let's see, we say check. Actually, we don't need to say anything if it was successful because there's going to be a lot of those. We only want to, if there's an error, say error adding check. And then let's print out the error message and the check object that it got. So let's just print out both of those things. Oh, now we really will have to say new check entry. Okay. So now if anything goes wrong, we'll at least get a message, but it will continue. It won't just crash, it'll go on to the next site. And we'll probably want to do the same thing. We'll probably want to wrap the get in a try. I'm not sure how it will respond. Will it just time out? I think it'll just time out and be okay. Site.save. So yeah, we want to, we can do the same kind of try and exception for that. So just in case there's any issues saving, we'll say there's error updating site, and we'll output the error message and the site. I suppose we could put it all in one try catch, but it would be nice to know exactly where it errored out. Was it erroring on the site update or the check, you know, the check that it was doing? So this should all still work. If we do check sites, bam, 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 it ran. So let's open the site checker, refresh it, and see if these times updated. Oh, well, this is the checks. So we see that it did create the checks, and it's got the site ID, foreign key, the time. And if we open the sites again, it looks like it updated the time to just now. Okay, so that all looks good and dandy. So let's, where are we and what is our goal? Let me check the agenda here. So we created our virtual environment, we installed Django, we created a new Django project, we set up PyCharm, we configured our settings file, we added the auth module, we did all the migrations, we created our management commands, we added the models, and we created our functions for the models. We created our method to check the sites. So we could do two things right now. We could either fix these to-dos, or we can set up the cron job. And these are minor things that we can fix later, so I'm going to show how to set up the cron job. And there's a couple ways to do this, but the most straightforward thing to do is you should be able to just do cron tab -E. You know, wherever you... No cron tab for root. Vim, please. Okay. Oh, great. It gives us a nice template. So at 5 a.m. every week of the year, what I want is like every minute or something. So there's something called Cron Guru. Yeah, so you can do, I want like now they have some samples. I think it's at every minute past hour 4. If we do a start here, that's at every minute. Yeah, and if we do 5, at every 5th minute. Okay, so for the purposes of our testing, we'll just do this every minute for now. So I'm gonna add a README now to the project, and I'm gonna store the cron job text because it's hard to memorize that stuff. Okay, so we got minutes, hours, day of the month, day of the week, and then the command. So the command is /home/nanodanos, and to run the Python virtual environment, you just have to run Python directly with the full absolute path. So if we do where Python and just copy that, that's it. And then we just do, you know, same thing, python manage.py, we'll say check sites. And so that's installed. I don't think we have to restart cron. And so if we open our database and we check out our sites and our check object here, so let's just refresh it every few seconds and let's see if at the minute it runs the check successfully and you know, adds the entry to the database. I'm pretty sure I don't have to restart cron, but I guess we'll find out. Okay, we got countdown. 16, 15, 13. In about 10 seconds we'll know, right? Here we go, moment of truth. No, I don't see it. Okay, so what's going on? We installed it for root, which might have been an issue. I might have written my thing wrong. I think, do I need to do like a bash -E like that? Hey Mythic, welcome. Glad you came by. Is it -E? Or is it -C? I think it's -C, huh? Yeah, okay. So but I'm also going to switch this over to my user. So let's just try cron tab -E for my personal user. Go down to the bottom and add it in. And so okay, let's give this one a minute and see if it works. So let's check the log for cron. Now, is that in... Do I have to do the journal CTL? Yeah, so did it error? Did it try and run and error out? Or did it just not run? last run. Wait, I'm not at the bottom, am I? Okay. Oh, it tried to do... No. Yeah, okay, so it tried to, it said no MTA, discarding output. It's like it tried to run. Okay, yeah, so here. This was a minute ago. Cron bash, yeah, that was bad because it's actually bash.c. But what happened here? Why did this one not run? Like, does the Python interpreter not have run? Is it not executable? So yeah, Mythic and anybody else that just joined, we are working on some Django. I'm basically showing how to do a command line application with Django and take advantage of the ORM and management commands. And we're basically writing a simple site checker that will ping a site and, you know, check if the site's up and store the information about it. Mythic says, thanks for the daily uploads. You're welcome. I've been enjoying doing these daily. So let's see. Okay, so something's wrong with the cron job now. Let's see. Let's try running the command that we gave cron tab. Let's try running that ourselves and just make sure it works. Yeah, so that worked. That worked and it added, so like let's delete all these. Just so if it runs and it works again, we'll see for sure it works. So why did it not work? I'm gonna try something else then. So another way to do this is to do, I'll create a folder called cron, and inside we'll put the actual script. So this one will be called, you know, check sites .shell. And okay, sure, add shebang line. In this case, we'll just we'll just give it, you know, a full-on path. Where were we at? Django CLI. And then we'll do just like we were to do it in a command prompt normally. And then we're there, and then we would do Python manage.py check sites just like that. So you write a script just like you would do it in the command, and then let's see, and then you add that to the cron job. So the cron just runs that script. Oh, you know what? I think I know what I did wrong here. I didn't give manage.py. I didn't put it in the right directory, so it's like it's running it. It's trying to run manage.py, but it's in the wrong working directory, and that's why it's failing. So we'll have to do that, and then we'll have to CD into the Django project and do this. So this will work. I'm pretty confident. So we'll want to just do, we don't even need to do the bash.g, we shouldn't need that, so we'll do, I know it's kind of a lengthy name, but that's okay. Django CLI site checker, cron, check sites.shell. And just to confirm, we will copy and paste that and run it. Django CLI site checker. Okay, so it should just be like this. Oops. home nano Django CLI. Oh, let me rename this to check sites with an S. It's just check site. No such file. Okay. CD there. Oh. Yeah, it kind of screwed me up when we put this in an extra subdirectory. So we'll just copy that. And it was... Okay. So we've only got 15 seconds before it runs at the minute, and we'll verify that it's working. And so we'll check right now, the database is empty. When the clock strikes the minute, in about 3, 2, 1, it should be running, and we should be able to refresh and see the checks, right? No? I guess not? Okay, let's check the logs again. Journal CTL-U cron. Go to the end. Now, did I still make another typo? I did? How did I do that? Site checker is cron. Oh, I didn't put the cron in there. And I need to chmod plus X. Okay. Cron tab -E. And then go down and clear out my mess here. Now, if we check the date, we're gonna have to wait, 45 seconds, I guess. But okay. So it looks like it's running. We'll go ahead and clear all these out and check it in a second. We got about 30 seconds. I feel good about this one. And where are we now? Hey, by the way, Nikita, Computers with Nikita, I was playing on the Minecraft server earlier. I'm gonna do some mods soon. I've been meaning to up the memory and add all those teleport mods and stuff. I might do that tomorrow. Maybe later tonight, we'll see. Okay. Let's check it. Yes! And it worked. And we can see it happened like right at the second. Okay, so our cron job is working. And I'm gonna copy and paste the cron job as an example. Where did my PyCharm go? I don't see it on the sidebar. Okay, whatever. Let's go back to the README and fix this cron entry example. So that's an example of how you can run cron. You can run a Django command on the cron job. And when you do that, you get all of the benefit of the ORM and interacting with all the databases and the logging and all that good stuff. And so these commands are relatively simple. You just you create a class from the base command, inherit from the base command, and you just create a function called handle. And inside handle, you do everything you need to do. So at this point, we have a relatively solid tool as a reference. There's only a couple things that we can do here, and that is we also need to tie a site to a user. But that's a little out of the scope here because we don't have any users at the moment. I could create one, I suppose, in the shell, but I'm not going to do that right now. We already saw how forward keys worked. So the other things we can do here is fix the time zone issue. So let's do that real quick. Django fix time zone issue. It's a simple fix. Okay, time zone support is disabled by default. It does everything in UTC. To enable it, set use tz equal true in your settings file. So let's go back to our settings shared, which has all of the settings. And we'll just do a search for tz. Okay, so it is using time zone. What it didn't like was our date object that was naive about time. So it even gives us a hit. Wild times. Let's see. Date time now. Oh, I know the better way to fix this. There is the date time module, and there's also the Django datetime module, and the Django one is more intelligent about. So if we do import, you see datetime and datetime. These are the core ones, but you'll also see Django utils datetime safe datetime. So that is the intelligent time zone safe one. So now if we run it again, we still get the message, so there it is. Interesting. I thought that would fix it. Okay, maybe there's let's read this real quick. When time zone support is active, which it is, Django stores datetime information in UTC. Yeah, that's good. Uses time zone aware date objects. Okay. Okay, here it is. Timezone.now is what we want, not datetime.now. That'll give us the time zone aware time. So we'll do timezone.now. Tell it to import, and we want Django utils time zone. So that's the way you fix it. So now when we run it again, it's got intelligent time zone stuff going on. And if we go back and check our site, that looks good. We should see lots of checks. Good, lots of checks. Okay. What else do we need to do? So we can knock that one off our to-do. What else do we need to do? Follow redirects. Yeah, that one... Well, actually, it looks like it is working now. Because before I was getting a 301, and now it's showing a 200. And I know for a fact my site does a redirect if you go to the non-www, and it redirects you to www. So it looks like it is following them and giving you the response for the final element after being redirected. So that's good. I guess we can take that one off because that is working as we expect. Oh, and you know what? It might have been because I did the head versus the get. So if I do this again, yeah, if you only do the head, you get a 301. I guess head does not actually follow the redirects thing, and that's why the documentation said it did by default, but it doesn't. Get actually does. So that's okay, and I wonder if we can limit the content length. That way if there's like a really, really long website, it won't just spin and download a huge thing. So Python requests, limit size. Max size is a limit on the connection pool, not on request size. As of request 2.3, the timeout applies to streaming requests too. So all you need to do is allow for a timeout for the initial connection and each iteration step. Oh, you know what? Stream equals true. I wonder if you do stream equals true and you just don't do anything with it, if it will just kind of discard everything that comes out. Interesting. I think it does. So maybe I still want to do the head, but let's try this. Pretty sure it was called allow redirects. Yeah. So that's interesting that it's not auto completing. I guess that's kind of an abstract function, but allow redirects equals true. Let's just do just the head. The head is good because it doesn't download the whole body. It only downloads the headers. So perfect. We got rid of the redirect issue. So we have two more things we need to do for this to be kind of satisfactory. We need to tie the site to a user. Yes, we need to do that. So let's go ahead and create a user. So let's do you can do python manage.py create super user. Oh, I need to go back. Okay, it's okay. So you do python manage.py create super user, and it will prompt you for all of the fields. Give us your email, give us your password. And now if we go and we look in the auth user table, we should see a user. And we've got our user there. So now we have a user object to associate our site with. So in this case, let's say for adding the website, let's add an argument for the user name. And, you know, you can do it by the email or whatever, but we'll just go by the name for now, for this purpose of demonstration. And so, before we do this, we actually need to say user equals user, if there is a user. So we need to get the user, user.objects.find. Is it .find or is it filter? It's filter where username equals options username. And then, well, let's see. Filter will return you more than one. Django model read. There's another one, I think it's called read. And read will give you it's guaranteed to give you one. But I'm not sure if you can put filters in there. Yeah, see now the filter's kind of highlighted. So what I want to do is do a get, a read. Okay, so on the right they've got contents. I want to create retrieving objects. Retrieve specific objects with filters. Retrieving a single object with get. Okay, objects.get, not read. Okay, user objects get, and I'm pretty sure it will return an error. Yeah, okay, it will raise multiple objects returned, or it will return does not exist, or it'll raise those exceptions. So let's copy those. There's a does not exist, and there is a multiple objects returned. Now, in our situation, the username should be unique, and that should be a constraint. So you shouldn't ever have a case where there's multiple ones, but it's good to just catch and check anyway, right? So yeah, okay, get, we're gonna do try looking up this user, and if it's not there, then we'll say standard outright error, user does not exist. And then the username. Options, username. Okay, we have to import this exception name. Entry does not exist. Okay, where is that exception defined? How do I import it? Django.core.exceptions. We can just give it the whole name. Django.core.exceptions. No? Django core exceptions? Import from Django core exceptions, import object does, oh, it's object does not exist. Interesting. Okay, we'll go with object does not exist, and then multiple objects returned. Multiple objects returned. And then, so we'll do another except clause. And we'll go ahead and print out the exception anyway. Okay, we'll just copy and paste that and say multiple users match username. Okay, so now we've got our error handling. We'll make sure that the user gets tied. So let's give it a shot. So now, if we do python manage.py help, we'll see all of our list of commands down here. And the one we want is add site. So we'll say python manage.py add site, and it's going to print out the usage. And so here it says following requirements are required. URL, description, username, and in that order there. So we're going to do add site, and the URL is going to be, we'll do another modification of dev dungeon, and then a description, test site, and then as the username, we'll do nanodano, because that's the user I just created. So I don't have to know the user ID, I just need to know the name by doing it this method. Okay, so it says site added, so let's try a username that doesn't exist. And local variable user reference before assignment, line 28. Oh, okay, so if there's an exception, we don't want to continue. So, actually, there was something called the command error. So let's go ahead and use the command error. Django command error. So, to use command error, you just say raise command error. So that's what we want to do. So instead of doing all this, we'll just say raise command error. Now that should So that should end the command. The command won't continue anymore from there. Because we don't want it to continue. If it can't find a user, then the command's going to fail, so it should just stop. Okay, and it automatically prints it out in red, so this is a much nicer way to do it than this this error here. Let's do the same thing. So we'll do raise command error. We'll basically rethrow an exception. Okay, cool. So now we got some more clean error handling. And we could also do a site check to make sure that the user doesn't already have a site for that name. So maybe we can try that. So we can say site.objects.filter user equals user and URL equals options URL. And we'll say existing match, and we should be able to do exists. Is exists the one we want? We can do existing match dot exists Django model exists. I want to make sure that's the right usage. Don't use this if all you want to do is determine if at least one result exists. It's more efficient to use exists. Okay. And we can even, so yeah, we'll do exists. We'll say if existing match exists, we will raise a command error and say, site already exists, and the site for the username too, for username. So we'll do user.name, username, and the URL. Okay, so let's try it again, and it should complain this time that our site already exists for NanoDano. This way, we will, in this, by requiring the user and the URL to match, will mean that multiple users can add the same site. Okay, so our command is looking pretty solid. Tie the site to a user. We did that now. So now if we open the database and we go look at the sites, we'll see that if we scroll over to user ID, the ones that we add now have a user. And now we kind of prevented some duplicates. So where's our to-do? Multi-threaded. We want to multi-thread all of our checks, so we can do this again. We can say python manage.py check sites. And so it's going to check all these sites, run through and say okay. So we want to multi-thread it to make it run faster. So the way to do this is with a thread pool. Thread pool executor, I think is what we want. Yeah, so we want is this thread pool executor. Okay, so we're going to use the example of the thread pool executor here. And to do this, we're actually going to have to, let's say max workers 32. So we're going to need to make a function. So check site. we're going to have to create a function here called checkSite so that we can submit the function to the thread so the thread can go execute kind of by itself. So checkSite is going to need the site object, right? Let me clear up some screen space. Okay. So where were we? Thread pool executor, but we need to do this a little bit differently. I'm gonna have to create some space. Okay, guys, I need to take a quick bathroom break and fill up my water and everything. So I'm gonna be back in about 2 minutes. So give me just 2 minutes, and I'll be right back. Hey everybody. Sorry about that break there, but I appreciate y'all for hanging out. So, where did we leave off? I'll recap, I guess, because people probably left and rejoined. So, for anybody who just joined, what we've been doing tonight is looking at Django, which is a Python web framework, but we've been using it not as a web framework. So typically with the web framework, you've got HTML templates, URL routing, and web servers all involved. But I'm showing the other aspect of Django. Now, all the stuff that I've shown is command line based. So we created command line functions that can be run that interact with all of the Django database models and all of that. So if you had an actual website and you were managing a big actual web application in Django, you can write these management commands to run things behind the scenes. It's good for like doing backups, cleaning out old data, doing sanity checks, adding users, resetting users' passwords, doing anything you need to do in the back end, like kind of as an admin. So for the example, what we've done is we set up a cron job to run one of these management commands. So we're using it purely in a back-end service kind of way. And what we've done for this example is create a little app that will check websites and see if they're up. So it'll do an HTTP request using the requests library, and it'll go through every site in the database, check if it's up, check what the response code is, and store that in the database. So we set up our Django to use a SQLite database, and we created a couple models, one for the sites. So it stores the URL and the user that it belongs to with a little description, and then we also are storing each individual check. So we've got a historical record of all the checks that were done and what the response codes were, so you can do some graphing. Actually, we might check that out while if we got some more time. I'm going to jot that down. Plotting history. Okay, so we did that with the data, the database. We also looked into the Python shell, or the Django shell. So if you do python manage.py shell, you get an interactive Python interpreter, and you can even do interface equals bpython, which is personally my favorite interactive one. And I wonder, there's another one called bpython urwid. Okay, it doesn't like that option, but bpython urwid is an even better version of bpython. And if you don't know what I mean, you get these you get autocompletes, things like that. So, and it even helps, it remembers your history, gives you autocomplete. It's loads better, and you can press up and get your history and things like that. So what we did, we wrote a command called check sites that will go through all of the sites in our database, check them with an HTTP request, and see how they are. Okay, so the last thing that we were doing here was we were going to take the checks that it does. Right now it just has a for loop, and it goes and it checks each site. But what we want it to do is actually kick off a thread for each one. So we copied this little example of the thread pool executor, but we're still integrating it into our code. So this block down here from line 30 to the end, this is our for loop that goes through all the sites and does the checks that we're trying to add threading to. So with the thread pool executor, it's red because it's not imported, unresolved reference. So if we do Alt Enter, it'll give us the suggestion, and yes, that's what we want, concurrent futures. Okay, So we've got with thread pool executor max workers 32. And actually, let's make that a settings value because I would like to tweak that. So let's do settings dot max site checker threads. That's what we'll call it. So settings, we haven't imported yet. So we'll say import this name, and yeah, Django CLI is the name of our app. So it's Django CLI.settings, and then this is highlighted because it doesn't exist. So it suggests that we make a function, but I don't want it to be a function. I want it to be a value. So let's go into the settings. So you can just do a control click, but we want settings shared. And let's put our custom stuff way down at the bottom. Custom. Okay, and it doesn't like that. There we go. And we want max site checker threads. And we'll just say 32 for now. Okay, so now we have a configurable variable for how many threads we want on our job. And so we want to do executor.submit and then the function name and then all of the parameters that we want to pass to the function with it. So yeah, we were going to have to basically break this out into another function so that we can pass the function to the thread to be executed, independently. So everything inside of here basically would be check site, right? Check site with the site object. And inside of that, we basically want to put everything there. And we already created the function here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is this is just a plain old function outside the class. I actually want this to be inside the class because I want it to have access to some of the class things like self.standardOutWrite. Oh, because it's here now, self has to be the first argument. So now we have check site as a function that's gonna do all the stuff it needs to do, but actually we don't want. I think there's a cleaner way to do this. Because the only thing that I want to be done in the other thread, I'm gonna keep undoing until I get this back to where it was before. Okay, so now we have it back in the for loop. The only thing that I really want to thread is this requests object call, right? So I think what we want to pass to the executor is requests.head with these things as the variables. So, and then what comes back will be the result, is going to be the response. Okay, so we want to put that. Okay, so we want this for loop to go inside of this with block. Okay, how do I want to do this? So we've got the thread pool executor, and this is what we need to do for each one. So that needs to go. Let's see, I'm thinking about this. Do we want this whole block to go in here? Like this, and then put this right here. This this doesn't feel right, but I'm gonna give this a shot. Response.status code. Well, we have this. Okay, so the response gets output there, but I also want to I want to see how the timing is. So we're gonna say starting check for the name of the site, site.url. Okay, so what we should see is like 10 of these messages immediately, and then these popping out as they finish. So let's try it. I'm not feeling too confident about that, but let's see. Check sites. It didn't. I have a weird indentation. Line 16. Oh, this old function up here that I'm not using anymore. Okay. String is not callable. Line 25. Oh, I need the percent. I'm doing a format string, so I do the percent. No, that didn't work right. Yeah, so it went through each one. Let's see. I gotta rebuild this whole function from scratch. I'm trying to adapt the old way to the new way, but there's different ways to use these thread pools. There's submit, there's map. Let's look at another example that they have here. It's threading stuff, you know, I don't do it all the time. I usually have to refer to the documentation like this. Thread, oh. Well, here we go. They give us an example using URLs. Okay. Yeah, load URL. So with thread pool, future to URL, we did that, and then you go through each future. Okay. Okay, yeah, so it's submitting all of them, and then it's going through all the things as completed. Yeah, this is looking familiar now. Okay. So let's, I'm going to comment all of this out because I kind of want to start a little fresh. So we've got, I'll still use this line. We've got our thread pool executor. So we've got to do for site and objects.all. Executor.submit, and then we're going to submit the same thing we had here. So we'll do we submit them all. We submit them all. We don't have to store. See, I'm a little confused on how this syntax works, to be honest. So future to URL ends up being a list because it does this. So that should be future to URLs, right? Okay. So we're gonna do this like they did. Future to URLs equals executor dot. So we'll do the we'll just copy this. Okay, so submit site.url colon, then you do for site in site.objects.all, right? Load URL colon URL. Okay, so I do like site for site in URLs. Blah blah blah. Okay, that looks good. So now we got the future of the URLs, and then we do this lovely line here for future in concurrent.futures.as completed, and that's the important one there. Oops. I jumped into the wrong file. Okay. Concurrent futures as completed on the future to, I'm going to call it future to responses. I think that and then we say response equals future.response, right? Result, future.result. And so what happens with these is it stores like a pointer to the responses, and then whenever it's done, it points to the response. And this loop will kind of go through and just pick the first ones that were done, and it'll exit when they're all done. So here we have the response. Wait. Oh. Hold on. So we've got... Oh, that's the original value. So that's the original site object. So if we wanted to get the original site object, we'll say site equals future to responses, and then the index is the future, right? We'll do the print of the type of the site as a debug. Then response equals future.result. And then we'll also do a print of the type of the response, and we'll try to do a print of the response.status code, because it should be a request response that we get. Okay, so let's try out this command now. Oh, it looked like it worked. That's beautiful. Okay, so great. It's running through them. They're multi-threaded, and it's just handling them as they get back. So to confirm this, let's try this. Let's write that function called check site, where you need the site, and we'll actually do the requests call here. So site.url this, and we'll say return that. Okay, so now we can submit check site. Actually, yeah, we can leave it. We can leave it outside the class. Okay, so check site, and then the site, right? Too many of the same variable names. Okay, so then to make sure this is actually working the way we expect it to, we can say starting to check site, and then the URL. So we should see a bunch of statements pop up right away that say starting to check, and then as they finish, we should see the other responses. Yep, and that's what we get. So they all start at the same time, and then as soon as they come back in, they flood in as done. So now if there's one site that takes a long time to check, it won't hold up all of the other ones. Okay, so that's actually nice. So we got the response, and let's see, let's check the types that were output and make sure it's what we expect. So the type was, yeah, the site, and then a response. Yeah, so they're the correct classes and object types. Let's delete all that debug stuff. Close out of this. This was the cron job we set up earlier. So if you missed it, to run the cron job of the Django command, we set up to run every minute, and then you just give it the path to the script. Okay, so we want to actually do something with this response, and what we were doing before was right here. So we can copy pretty much everything we were doing after we get the response. So we wanted to just print the response as a sanity check, set these, update the site save, and then save the new check object too. So let's run this again, make sure it still works. Okay, we got our responses. Now let's go to the database and just make sure that it gets updated. So let's check all these. Let's just go ahead and delete them and commit, run it, and we should see all our database entries. Oh! 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, it made 2 entries for each one. So what did we do? What did we do wrong here? It shouldn't be making 2. Let's see. Response equals results. Printing it out, that's okay. Are we doing save twice? Or what's happening? We're doing a new check entry save. Oh, you know what? The other one might have been the cron job that's still running. Yeah, so that one ran right at the second, right at the top of the minute. So that was actually the cron job that we set up running, you know, as it should. So let's run it again real quick and check real fast. Okay, good, now there's only 5. So everything's working as expected. Okay, and so we can delete all of this now. This has all been replaced now. Yep, all that can go. Okay, so now we're doing everything with this nice thread pool executor, and then handling all of the responses as they come back. And we could even like break this out into like another function called handles site update or update site or something. In fact, that's not a bad idea. Let's try it. Let's say like store response with the site and the response. And we'll create this function and we'll just drop in all that code. And to fix that, we actually will put that inside our class. Give it self. So this should work exactly the same. Self.store response. So now it's a little bit cleaner. Okay, let's give that a shot, just to make sure it still looks good. Okay. Excellent. I think we have pretty much accomplished the goal for the night. Excuse me, I need to take a drink of water. Okay. So let's recap again one more time real quick what we've done. And I'm going to do that as I kind of document this in the README. Site checker. We'll just call it site checker, I guess. And so what this does, this is a Django application that has, with some CLI, they're called management commands, so let's just call them that, with management commands that are called via cron job. Okay, we'll say edit with cron tab -e. And we left the script in there. The script has the directory hard-coded, but this is just an example, so it's not meant to be perfect. But this should be good. If you're doing your own thing and you want to adapt it, you can set it up however you want. So we've got our management commands here with check sites, and we created a helper command called add site so that we can add a user to the database. And I'll demonstrate that one again real quick. So you do python manage.py add site, and then it'll print out the usage and it'll say you need these parameters. So if we do add site devdungeon.com with a description, and then the username, and my username is nanodano. So we try and add it, and it says site added. Great. We try and add it again. It's going to say site already exists, which is good. And now we have pretty much every variation of devdungeon in the site list. So if we check all the sites, you see there's HTTPS devdungeon, no S, with W's, no W's. Okay, so then we can add sites like that, all command line. Then from there we can also do the check sites. That one doesn't take any arguments, it just does its job. And that's the one that we trigger from the cron job, python manage.py check sites. So now, and then when we run that, and we run check sites, it does all of the database updates. So if we look inside the store response method that we kind of pulled out, that takes the site object and it updates the last response code and the last time checked, and then it saves it, and then it creates a new check entry and then saves that, and that's what updates the database. So our cron job runs a Django command that updates the database, and so we're using it all command line. We haven't had to mess with any URLs or HTML templates or anything, but we got all the power of the settings file that kind of ties everything together, and the models, as well as the benefit of the migrations, the whole ORM. I mean, what else do you get with Django out of the box? The database abstraction. You get the manage.py. That comes with a bunch of handy functions and commands like the start app, a little code generator. You've got the shell and the DB shell. So there's a lot of reasons to do it, and especially if you are going to make a web API, REST API service, or you do have a website where you want to do all this, but you also want to have web pages. You know, this is just what you want to do in the back end. This is kind of a crash course on how to do back end management stuff with Django, or just purely command line applications. So if anybody out there has any questions, now would be a good time to ask, because I'm going to start wrapping it up. So just to give everybody a reminder, you can go to devdungeon.com, check out all kinds of good tutorials. You can join the Discord server on the right. There's a link to the Discord server. You can buy a copy of my awesome book, Security with Go. What else? You can go to the Dev Dungeon YouTube channel, which you are watching. Make sure you do subscribe and get the notifications. I've been trying to do these streams nightly, and so in the previous nights we did learning Rust from scratch. I started learning Rust as a total beginner and did all the way up through HTTP requests and packet capturing, starting with zero knowledge. Live coding, we did PayPal IPN with Flask. So we created a really simple Flask application that receives PayPal notifications when somebody purchases something. We walked through that whole process. The night before, we did Minecraft custom plugin development, which ties in with the night before where we looked at how to actually set up a custom server and install plugins. And the night before, we looked at making chatbots for Discord, AI chatbots to be specific. So be sure to check out some of that other stuff. We did installing Arch Linux before that. So be sure to join the Discord, come hang out, subscribe to see the notifications, and check out the other nights. I should be back tomorrow night, and we're going to do a different topic. So thank you everybody for tuning in. I will catch you next time.